Hello. Get your official products such as this marvelous t-shirt that I'm wearing, or this great coffee mug that I'm drinking out of, and many other products with the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis logo at https://www.zazzle.com/store/astuffstore, and make sure you get your 15% discount today. The Silent Civil War by Selwyn Jones and Nan O'Brien, coming in October 2022.
Welcome to a new podcast show about stuff. It's the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Here's your host, Stephen Davis.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. I have a very special guest on today. You might have seen her in that great commercial, and you might know, but here she is, my granddaughter, Jewel Williams. Hello, Jewel.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing today? I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I just so happy because this is the first time that we have really seen each other because of the pandemic in almost 3 years.
Yeah, it sure is a long time.
Oh, yes. And she sprouted up so much. And I thank her for at least saying hello today. You have anything you want to say to the audience?
Hey, audience.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. My guest today is Charles White, who has, in his later years, become a most prolific playwright after being a practicing attorney for many years. His play, Succession, was the hit of the National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem this year. I welcome you so much to this broadcast, Mr. White. How are you doing today? How you doing?
Well, I'm fine. How are you?
Hey, I'm trying to get famous like you.
Silly.
I happen to be in Atlanta today. First time I was able to see my granddaughter since 2019 because of the pandemic.
Oh, wow. How old is she?
She is 10 now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 10 now. But it's great. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. We're going to have a little bit of fun.
Okay.
Even though you think you're going to be the worst interview. Where were you born at?
Born in Brooklyn, in New York.
The center of the universe. That's what I tell everybody. And I tell them that because I live here, live there now. Before, when I lived in Manhattan, that was the center of the universe. Oh, and what schools did you go to while you were in Brooklyn growing up?
Oh, God. The only one I remember is PS 87.
And where was that located at? You ain't get that old now, are you?
We're talking like second and third grade. Herkimer Street, maybe.
Oh, okay. What area of Brooklyn did you grow up in?
We moved around a bit between Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy.
Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your mother and father. And did you have any siblings?
Only child. Parents split up when I was about 3.
Okay.
Raised primarily by my mother, both from the South. They met up here.
Okay. What was your mother's name?
Virgie White.
Virgie White. And your father?
Thomas
White.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I knew a Thomas White. What part of the South were they from?
Father from Georgia, mother North Carolina.
Oh, what part of North Carolina? North Carolina, Gastonia. Oh, I lived in Fayetteville. I keep saying that to a lot of folks. I've been having quite a few people from the North Carolina area. Last week, I had a gentleman, 96 years old, a pioneer in the music industry from Franklin, North Carolina, which was in the Smoky Mountains. I didn't know they had blacks in the Smoky Mountains, but hey, he was in the Smoky Mountains.
Everywhere.
Do you remember the high school that you went to?
Yeah, I went to boarding school in Connecticut. That I remember. Worcester School in Danbury, Connecticut.
How did you get there? Scholarship or?
My mother drove me and said, "This is what you're going to do. I'll see you in 4 years."
Oh, how was
I
it?
was 13, and you adjust. It was a whole bunch of white kids, a couple of black kids. At that age, you adjust.
Yeah, but you must have had some interesting experiences there, particularly at the time.
You'd be surprised. These were like rich, civilized white people who may have been racist, but they weren't really going to show it.
Okay.
So it was not, there was nothing overt.
Okay.
I'm sure it was there, but there was nothing overt. They were polite people.
Did you enjoy your experience there? Or did you learn a lot?
I went there. I didn't hate it. It was fun.
You are so nonchalant. Is that the lawyer in you?
I don't know. No, it was fine. I have a couple of people I'm still in touch with from those years. I had a black roommate for a while. He has passed on. 4 years, you're age 13, you adapt, you get used to it. And it was fine. I would say I would probably do it over. If I had to do it all over again, I'd probably do the same thing.
Okay. So it prepared you very well.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you left. I shouldn't say left because that sounds like you just left, but you graduated from there. And then where did you move on to?
I went to Princeton.
Oh, la-di-da.
There you go.
Princeton in those days, huh?
Yeah.
We have a couple of friends that were there at the same time, huh?
I know them.
Carlton Brown.
Melvin McRae.
Melvin McRae.
Yeah.
All right. And now give the audience a sense of you're this person who happened to have gone to boarding school, but you are the first day you go to Princeton University. And what were your feelings when you walked through the doors?
More of the same. You have to realize boarding school is exactly like that, except you have more freedom in college.
Okay.
So when I went to Princeton, it was like, oh, this is easy.
Really?
Yeah, it was more of the same. I didn't have to go to study hall anymore. I could stay up as late as I wanted. It was freedom. In fact, my freshman year, I had 2 white roommates that went to boarding school with me.
Oh, really?
It felt like we were doing the same thing in a different place.
Oh.
So
All you all applied for Princeton at the same time?
well, I don't know. I didn't fill out their applications. I don't know what they did.
No, you could have said, I want to go to Princeton, and they would have said that I want to go to Princeton. So let's all apply to see whether we get to Princeton.
Nah, people made their own choices. We all applied to a couple of different places, and we all happened to prefer Princeton. So there we were. But it wasn't there was no talk about that. Those schools, a lot of kids are legacies and they go to Ivy League schools. So they were both legacies, by the way. Their fathers had both gone there.
Oh, okay.
They were pretty much guaranteed. Yeah.
So while you were there, what are some of the things that were interesting that happened during those periods of time? That seemed to be during the tumultuous times of the late 60s, early 70s, where things were hopping at universities, particularly in terms of from a Black perspective.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we had certain little protests and things like that. Like I think there was a library takeover and that sort of thing. Like
Just a little library takeover, huh?
Big library.
Did it make the news?
Yeah, you realize you're going back on 50 years of memory here. I'm sure it made the local news. There were like protests, and I think we made some headway. There was only a handful of Black students when I was there, and then the year after I came, the numbers started to increase, and I would say to some extent that could have been related to the activities of the students. Of the Black students.
Were you a protester or were you a?
I was I was a silent protester, put it that way.
I always remember when Carlton told me this story about when he was in Mississippi in high school and they formed a group and they were protesting, and his father and some other folks got together and was talking about these kids that were rabble-rousing and causing so much trouble and everything else. And somebody told him, but your son is the leader. So I thought maybe you were a rabble rouser and the Stokely Carmichael of Princeton.
Nah, I was not. I was down with the cause, but I was kind of in the background.
Okay, okay. Now, what are some of the things that you studied? I know that in the end you became a lawyer, but what was your undergrad degree in?
I majored in philosophy.
Okay.
There was no great thought. I just had to pick a major. So I picked one. I said, okay, this is probably a very good discipline. So I'll do this.
And did that help you in your later endeavors, particularly as you went to college, to grad school or to law school?
Not in any way I can determine. Maybe just getting used to digging into certain things at a certain level, maybe. But I can't actually consciously say I saw where that discipline directly influenced my later studies. It might have, but just because I was used to studying it, but not in a direct sense that I can really recall.
Did you, when you graduated from Princeton, did you go immediately to law school, or did you go out and work and then come back to law school?
I worked for a year as a paralegal.
Okay.
Just to see, get a feel for what I thought I was getting into.
And you evidently you liked it because you pursued it later on, huh?
I would say that I wanted to make a good living. Liking it would be a stretch.
Oh, and then
listen, I was the first generation in my family to go to college. It was like, you got to be a doctor or a lawyer. So I wasn't like in love with the idea, but I said, okay, I need to do this.
Or as many of them, you need to get a job at the post office.
That I did not consider.
That's not what you wanted to do.
That didn't even occur to me.
Now, where did you go to law school at?
NYU.
And how was your experience there?
I hated law school. I hated every second of it, but I slogged through it.
Why particularly did you hate it? It's just the discipline?
I didn't have, there's that. Yeah, and I didn't have any interest. I was just doing it because I felt that I should do it. And so I was forcing myself to do it and get the advantage of it. In fact, one of your prior guests was in law school with me. And she was a real star, LaBrenda Garrett.
Oh, okay.
She was there. Now she was a law student. She was terrific. I was just there.
Oh, LaBrenda. Now, her daughter is my cousin.
Wow, interesting.
Her daughter is my cousin. It is a very small world. That's why I was asking you where your mother and father was, because I know in Orangeburg, South Carolina. What part of Georgia was your father from?
He was, okay, this is interesting, but he was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and then raised somewhere in Macon and in Savannah.
Because I know of some whites families that are in Orangeburg from the 1800s.
Wow.
And I know that a lot of the whites and a lot of the folks in Orangeburg went to Georgia. And as a matter of fact, I had my mother's aunt, my grandmother's on my mother's side, her oldest sister moved to Jacksonville, and she lived in Jacksonville for quite some time. And the whites were in that area. So that's why it's interesting tracing roots. Now, you slogged through NYU, you graduate. What was your first job out of NYU?
I was a law assistant at the Appellate Division, Second Department in Brooklyn.
Okay. And how did you get that job?
I recall, I just sent an application.
Oh, I thought maybe you knew some of the folks in Brooklyn that
I was completely unconnected at that point.
Okay. Did you like working at that? Was that, what did the lawyers do? They clerk for somebody?
Yeah, you basically, yeah, we were in a pool where the cases come into the court and they assign the assistants to research them and write and brief the cases and tell the judges what's going on.
Okay.
Ultimately, yeah, so it's a law clerk job.
And how long were you there for?
I think I was there that would have been 2 years. Yeah, 2 years.
Now, was this before or after you passed the bar?
Oh, after.
Now, you passed the bar.
Yeah.
You're a Black man who went to boarding school, went to Princeton, went to NYU. Were all the young ladies falling all over you?
No.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Or you just don't want to say that because Donna might hear?
They were not.
What are some of the things that you did? Did you hang out at Leviticus?
I
Has
must have
somebody-
been there. I was not a serious hangout guy. I probably was there a couple of times, but I was not a serious hangout guy.
Oh, you seem to have been so laid back. Is that describing you, a laid back person?
I guess. Now we're doing a lot on long-term memory here, so I'm trying to think, what was I like then? Part of it was those first legal jobs, your hours are so long, you're not really getting out much. You're just working all the time. And so that's one reason it wasn't so much that I didn't want to go out and have a good time, but the first couple of jobs, you're just working and around the clock.
Okay, now after you leave the courts, where did you go?
I went to a law firm in Manhattan.
Am I jogging your memory by asking you which one?
I'm not one who wants to mention names, but this law firm doesn't exist anymore. Webster and Sheffield.
And how long were you there for?
4 or 5 years, maybe. Yeah, maybe 4 or 5 years. And former Mayor Lindsay was actually a partner there.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. Any interesting cases during that particular period of time?
Nothing that comes to mind. Again, you're working around the clock. I was a grunt. I was not like, I actually did work. It's funny. I did work on something with former Mayor Lindsay. I forgot what it was. I just had a small piece of it, whatever it was. By the way, there's a couple hundred lawyers and they farm out pieces of cases to the associates, and nothing really comes to mind. It was a good experience. I learned a lot, but I can't remember any particular case that grabbed my interest.
I had David Bythewood. Do you know David Bythewood?
I know the name, probably from your show though.
Oh, when I had him on, he was telling me about the cases that he had, and one of the cases was where he was the lawyer for one of the 5 heads of the family for the mafia.
I had nothing like that.
Oh, that must have been some experience.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would get more like research this question: can this client do X or not? That sort of thing. Writing memos.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has that been the mode of what you did in terms of law? Did you handle any cases that folks might know of?
No, nothing of note.
Is that because you're a quiet person and you don't want to name names? Is that it?
It's actually because I'm a quiet person. I actually don't. No, there really wasn't anything of note. There were a couple of famous partners. Lindsay. There's another one, Harvey Meyerson. And again, I was, as a junior associate, you're low on the totem pole. I'm just cranking open the books and writing memos. Good training, but I didn't get involved in anything glamorous.
Okay.
No.
Now, you stayed there for 5 years, and then where did you go?
I went to what was then, Time Warner, but then it was just Manhattan Cable TV, which was a division of, it wasn't even Time Warner then, it was Time Inc. So I was a cable TV lawyer.
Okay. Were they on 23rd Street?
Yes.
Oh, now I'm going to tell you my involvement with them. I had a television show called Illuminations, and it showed on Manhattan Cable.
Okay.
Back in the 70s. No, yeah, was it the 70s? No, it wasn't the 70s. I'm sorry. It was in the 90s, really.
Okay. Yeah, I was there in the 80s, actually.
Yes. And we used to go to the studio at 23rd Street to shoot the show.
Okay.
Now, did you stay with Time Warner when they merged did you stay with Time Inc. when they merged with Time Warner?
With Warner Media, whatever. Yeah. And in fact, I moved from Manhattan. Manhattan was split into 2 cable franchises. There was Southern Manhattan and Northern Manhattan. And Manhattan Cable was the franchisee for Southern Manhattan. And at that time, a company, Group W, was the franchisee for Northern Manhattan. And then a Time Warner company acquired Group W. And so I ended up moving from Manhattan Cable on 23rd Street to what became Paragon Cable in Northern Manhattan. And that was on, what was that, 200 and was it 215th Street, maybe 215th, 219th, one of way up there, the very tip of Manhattan.
Yeah, I remember it being up there. I never was
Yeah.
up that far.
I was there for a bunch of years too.
Okay. What did you do with them?
Same thing. I was a cable TV lawyer for each of them. I did the same thing for both.
Oh, were you involved with the different mergers that was happening?
No, not really. I was involved certainly in the franchising with the borough of Manhattan, day-to-day cable issues, but no, I did not do the acquisitions.
Who were some of the known persons that you dealt with at Time Inc., Time Warner, Paragon Cable?
The well-known persons. Well, I don't know if you'd really remember any of them. The head of Manhattan Cable when I was there was a guy named Jack Galt. He was there, and I guess he reported to Nick Nicholas, who was the chairman of Time at the time. These are like old names, man.
That was before Stephen Ross.
Ross he was on the Warner side.
Warner side.
So when Time and Warner merged, that's when he became a factor in Time Warner. But I never had to deal with people at that level. In fact, the immediate parent company of the Manhattan franchises was a company called ATC, American Television and Communications in Denver. And so at one point, there was a monthly meeting in Denver that I had to attend. But again, you wouldn't have really heard of most of those people because they lived in Denver, although they were Time Warner employees.
I remember going to Time Warner for a meeting in Denver, Inglewood, right?
Yeah, that's right. Boy.
Now, how did being in cable, being a lawyer, you think of it more on the legal side, business side. How did that affect your creativity?
I would say I completely negated it. Had nothing to do with it.
You didn't have any desire, like right now, I started off by telling folk about you, the playwright. And although I'm not getting there yet, I'm trying to figure out the links of what made you decide to become a playwright.
Let's go back.
Okay.
You past that. In high school and in college, I was on the student newspapers.
Okay.
Can't remember the name of the high school newspaper. It might be in the Worcester Journal and the Daily. And I worked on the Daily Princetonian for a couple of years. And I was also in the creative writing program at Princeton. So the writing thing was there. And at the time when I was about to graduate from college, I thought about when you're applying to schools and whatnot, I thought about journalism school for a brief instant. And then I thought, I better go ahead and be a lawyer because that's more stable, whatever. So anyway, so the writing instinct was there. And then going back earlier than that, growing up as a kid, my mother, although not in the arts, was a great fan. And so she used to bring me to Broadway musicals. I remember her taking me, the first time I remember she took me to the original Music Man. Funny, Music Man's playing now, it was a 10th revival or whatever, but she took me to see the original Music Man.
With Robert Preston in it?
Now this is more interesting. He had the original, he was original, wasn't Harold Hill, but when we saw it, it must have been late in the run because Burt Parks played that role. And I knew actually, and at that age, I wouldn't have known who Robert Preston was, but I knew who Burt Parks was because he did the Miss America pageant.
I find that fascinating because you don't think of Burt Parks as being in a play. You think of him as Miss America.
Yeah. So he was the replacement actor for Robert Preston.
Oh, okay.
And I remember, and so my mother basically got me acclimated to going to theater. And then at Princeton, I had a student subscription to McCarter Theater. So I always was a patron of the arts. I was always involved. I was always going to see plays. It did not occur to me for a long time that I would be writing them.
Okay. Now, you stayed with Time Inc., Paragon for how long?
All my job stints were about 6 or 7 years, 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere in there.
Okay. And then you moved on to where? Because I want to get to the Playwright. I'm merging them two together.
You're not there yet. I went to Viacom Cable after that.
Oh, okay. Viacom.
I stayed in cable for a while.
All right. And what were some of the interesting things that happened while you were at Viacom Cable? Is that far enough back or closer to the time that you can remember?
I will tell you, when I was at Viacom, that's when that's when the internet became a commodity and we started having PCs on our desks and that kind of thing. I remember stuff like that. Again, I was involved in franchising, but it was more across the country. Again, now I worked on Broadway, 1515 Broadway, but again, the cable headquarters was in Pleasanton, California. So again, I was making, as opposed to my monthly trips to Denver when I was at Time Warner, I had a monthly trip to the Bay Area, to Pleasanton, California, with the cable headquarters out there.
So did you get to interact with some of the creativity in terms of cable? Or was it just mostly franchising and lawyer stuff?
Franchising, lawyer stuff, not really. I got to take you back again. You wanted an interesting story. Here's an interesting story. Go back to Manhattan Cable.
Okay.
The most interesting responsibility I had was screening pornography on the public access channel. Here's your interesting story. There's an obscenity rule, basically a standard. And so we weren't permitted to show anything on the public access channel that was obscene. So it fell to me, and actually a paralegal helped me to determine what was obscene. And so if something was obscene, they'd send us the films early. We'd have to watch all this wonderful or terrible porn, depending on your point of view. And if something if I judged it was obscene, we'd send it back to the producer and say, you've got to cover this up, do whatever. And very often they'd send it back with a blue dot over the offending parts. And whenever that happened, the producers would then go on the show and say, if you believe in First Amendment freedom, call Charles White at this number and complain. So whenever I basically said something couldn't be shown for obscenity, I would get like 500 phone calls that week, screaming and yelling about I was suppressing First Amendment freedom.
Did it change? Did they have any influence in changing? No, but don't they have pornography on cable now?
Theoretically, they had it then, but if it's obscene, it gets cut. And obscenity, it's somewhat subjective.
Very subjective. I know a lot of people who like porn.
Now, I'll tell you a very funny story. There was one, the paralegal she would actually get the films and cue them up and calm me down. And she'd watch it with me. And it was kind of embarrassing because I didn't know this woman that well. So we're sitting there watching porn together. Okay, this is really kind of creepy. But at one point we watched this golden shower. And so I was like, is this obscene? I don't really know. So I said to her, I said, what do you think? Obscene or not? She said, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And I don't remember if we cut it or not, but anyway. So that was my flirtation with creativity in cable.
Okay. Now you were with Viacom 6 years?
Around that. Yeah, I'm ballparking it.
Okay.
We're still in the 90s here.
Okay. And you are basically being a lawyer, doing your thing. At this point, you were more than a junior attorney now, right? You had some say into some of the things that happened within the cable industry at that particular period of time.
I wasn't junior, but let's not overstate it. There were definitely people above my head.
There's a lot of people that are above your head, but when you're a junior attorney, you just do what you're told. When you are rising the ranks, then you have some input into some of the strategies in terms of moving forward. How do you get a franchise? What are some of the things that you need to do in terms of that? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, as I got more senior, I had a little more authority. That's true. Can't deny that.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm asking you, because I remember one of the things that I worked with the FCC on a little bit later on was trying to get it where people can buy their set-top boxes. And of course, we got a lot of pushback from the cable industry, a whole lot of pushback, so that it didn't happen. But I see now that they are able to buy set-top boxes, but still people rent their boxes for most part if they have cable. There's been so much cutting the cords lately.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, my daughter was telling me that she don't have cable anymore. She has Hula, she has Netflix, and she has something else. And
I'm like your daughter. Netflix, Amazon Prime.
now, after you left Viacom, did you stick with cable or you went into a different direction?
Went back to a law firm and some cable stuff, but branching out into some general software contracting, that kind of thing. Yeah, kind of cable based, but it went a little bit beyond that.
Okay. And you stayed with them for a period of time? Is it 6
Yeah.
years again?
It was up around there. I think that got me into the 2000s. Yeah, that took me, that took me into the 2000s. Did that again, a lot of kind of licensing cable stuff.
Tell me about the stops that you had right after that.
From that law firm, I actually I was at the NFL, I was a lawyer for the NFL. And again, it was still doing.
Oh, that's right, you were.
Yeah, I was a lawyer for the NFL. And that's funny. And that was fun. Again, that was a lot of hours. It was a very good job, a lot of hours. If you like football, it's a great job because all the perks are football perks.
So tell me about some of them perks.
Like going to the Super Bowl, that kind of thing. If you're a football fan, you can basically go to all the games you want and that kind of thing, which is so funny. My wife and daughter could care less. My son thought it was great. But interesting job, interesting people, you get to know all the folks that you read about in the NFL news, Roger Goodell and all that. But great job, great place to work, long hours, because it's basically a small organization. But again, if you're a football fan, you will OD on football. So
what's in your mind? What was one of the greatest games that you went to during that time?
See, that's tough because I went to so many. I'm trying to remember one of the Super Bowls. I guess the Super Bowl that the Giants won over the Patriots with that catch against the helmet.
Oh, yes, that was a great game.
Whatever year that was, 2007 or something. Yeah, I was at that one. That was the most fun because the New York team won and you had that great comeback with that crazy catch.
Oh, yes,
So
yes, yeah.
That's the one I remember most.
And why did you leave the NFL?
Hey, it was time. Long hours, they were offering packages. It was time.
Okay, now, how far are we away from you deciding that you wanted to be a playwright?
We're right there. And I've given you the setup.
Okay. We're there.
We're right there. And part of the fact that the key thing was there, NFL was really long hours. And I went from the NFL to my current employer, which shall go unmentioned. And the hours are more manageable. It's more of a family-friendly company in that way. And so I found myself not cranking out work all weekend and working till 10 and 11 o'clock every night. And a couple of friends of mine mentioned, you want to get back to the writing you did in college. I said, no, not really. I thought that ship has pretty much sailed. And finally, one of them said, why don't you audit the playwriting course at New Federal Theater? And I said, okay, no harm in that. And so I did that. And I knew within 5 minutes that I had completely suppressed any urge I had to write. I knew immediately. And so I just started doing it.
Okay, now let me go back because I'd be remiss in not asking you this, and then we're going to get into the plays. Is your lovely wife? How did that come about? Where did you meet her at?
To tie it in, I met her when I was working at Manhattan Cable, actually. And let's just say it was a blind date. That's as far as.
Were you smitten after the blind date?
I knew that we could at least be very good friends. I knew there was great potential.
It sounds like Jimmy Casterbunch on potential.
I knew, I would get that point. I was in my 30s. It wasn't like I was 18. I knew, oh yeah, this is someone that we said, even if this didn't work out romantically, we could definitely be very good friends.
And tell the audience what the name of your wife.
Donna Jurgen.
Donna Jurgen White.
Yeah.
Was she from Brooklyn?
No, she was born in Manhattan, but basically grew up in New Rochelle.
Oh, okay. Lots of folks I know that's up in New Rochelle. I had an experience one time in terms of New Rochelle where I was invited to go to this party up in New Rochelle, and it was a party for the president of Ghana, Jerry Rawlings at the time. And they gave me the street name to go to. Lo and behold, I go to that named street. but I didn't notice whether this street that I stopped at was lane instead of street. And I go, there's a party going on, and I knock on the door. And, oh, this is not there. It was Ken Chenault's house. And he was having a party for, Jeffrey was in charge of that school up in Harlem.
Oh, I know who you mean. I can't think of the name.
Yeah. Oh, what's Jeffrey's name? And I walked in and I said, this is the wrong party. I finally found the party, but I just thinking of New Rochelle. How long was it before you got married?
Oh, let's see. We met in 1984. We got married in 1987.
And you have two wonderful children.
Yes. Yes.
I remember meeting them out in Sag Harbor. So now we're at your demarcation line where you're crossing over from being an attorney.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're still being an attorney, but you have turned your attention to writing. What were some of your inspirations in terms of some of the plays that you did write?
The first full-length play I finished, which actually I think we're going to get that produced next summer. Actually, it's a dispute over a house in Sag Harbor, actually. And I made up the story where it was about a husband's married to a woman who is co-owner of a house. She and her brother co-owners of a summer home in Sag Harbor. Husband has no title. But anyway, he loses his job in the recession. This is in the 2008 Obama era. Loses his job in the recession, and his plan to get back on his feet is to sell the house owned by his wife and brother-in-law, because gentrification has really forced the home values way up. So he wants to sell the house, start his own business, do whatever, and the wife is like absolutely against it. So that was the first one. That was the first full-length play I finished. I wrote a bunch of short ones. That was the first full-length one I finished. And then
What was the name of it?
Unentitled.
Unentitled. Okay.
Yeah. NEC, it was in this contest, and NEC did this sort of workshop production of it this year. It actually, so it's supposed to come back next year. We'll see how that goes. So that was when I particularly, I don't know, it's probably not the best play I've written, but I really liked that one. I've been working on it periodically. I'd like to really improve it. So.
What is your way that you go about in terms of creating your work? People have different ways that they do it.
My pre-COVID, the way I did it was I'd finish work and I'd go to this coffee shop fairly near my house and write for 2 hours before I came home, because once I come home, I don't feel like doing anything. Now, since I've been working at home for 2.5 years and I've been in the office once, I've had to change that around. So I'm at home all day, and end of the workday, I'll take a break. I might eat something, I might work out, take a break, then maybe eat something, then maybe write for a while. So that's how I do it. And then weekends, obviously, I have a lot more free time on weekends to do the writing. And a lot of the writing is research. Sometimes you're on the computer just finding out a lot about your topic.
One of the plays that I see that you did quite a bit of research was one that I actually saw at the Billie Holiday Theater?
Yeah, Oscar DePriest, the DePriest incident. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell the audience about that one.
That's when I stumbled on that. I was researching something else, and I came across this article about Oscar DePriest, who was the first Black congressman elected in the 20th century from Chicago. And I looked at this article, and the article mentioned that in those days, the first lady always held a tea party for the congressional wives. And when Oscar DePriest was elected, the Southern Democrats had a fit because they were so afraid that this Negro woman was going to be sipping tea with white women at the White House. And I just stumbled on it, and it struck me as, wait, that sounds really petty, really stupid. It struck me as interesting, and it may obviously was big news in those days, but it struck me as who would even believe a story like that today? That's just so dated. And a friend of mine convinced me, no, it really isn't. He said, nothing's changed that much, and you should write about it. And so I said, let's try. I'll do it. So I ended up writing it, and given the Trump effect on things, it's even more realistic now than I ever would have thought. So it's a play really about how what he goes through to get his wife to the tea party, and whether she gets there and the direct aftermath of that.
I must tell you, even though it was a reading that I went to, it was a very moving piece. I liked it very much. And in some ways, it helped me in terms of my own quest in terms of family from way back. It made me think of those days and how those people had to survive.
Yeah.
And I always say to people that I feel sorry for all the people who came over on the Middle Patches who died, but the strongest ones were the ones who survived so that we could be here. And that piece is a piece of a puzzle in terms of our own journey.
Yeah.
Where we know she would have never been invited to the White House just 30 years earlier.
Yeah. And it was a struggle to get her invited.
Yes.
When it actually happened.
When people think of it, they might think of it, first of all, as a little thing, but it was a big thing.
Yeah.
Because it's the beginning of acceptance in certain things. And you can move on to the next hurdle that you have to overcome.
Yeah.
That's highly recommend that if it comes on Broadway or any place, that they go see it.
I'll tell you, it's funny. It was recently read in San Francisco by the Lorraine Hansberry Theater out there.
Uh-huh.
They're trying to cough up some money to get it done out there. So hopefully that'll happen, and then we can get it to some other places as well. Because it's I kind of piece too. It's an interesting bit of history that's, for the most part, it's been forgotten.
Now, I had one of my folks that I work with in Winston-Salem this past couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, I told her she needed to look you up. And I know that she went to the play. She told me that it was a great play. Tell the audience about your play, Succession.
Okay, that was fun. That premiered at the National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem just a few weeks ago. And it was the sleeper hit of the festival. I was pleasantly surprised by that. And the really good news is my son has the lead role in the play. For me, that's the most gratifying part. My son's an actor and he is very much in the play. So that was a lot of fun.
I can imagine what Donna felt like. Husband wrote it and the son is in it. Oh, yeah. She hit the jackpot, didn't she?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a great experience. It really was. But that play was written. That's really funny. I had two objectives with that play. One was I wanted to write a tribute to Black theater because nobody really writes about Black theater. It's also around. So I wrote it as this tribute to Black theater. Like, what is Black theater? What goes on in Black theater? And then the structure I used was one of my favorite films. Again, a film I used to watch, a black and white film from 1950 that I used to watch with my mother, All About Eve. And I basically used the structure of All About Eve to tell this story, this behind the scenes, backstage story about Black theater. And so a double tribute to All About Eve and the Black theater. And it worked. And I've been working on it a long time. 10 years ago, it was a 10-minute play. And now it's a 2-hour play. And it had a very good reception at the Black Theater Festival. I was pleasantly surprised by that. I had gone down to North Carolina for rehearsals, and I knew that they were doing a really good job. The director was terrific. Actors were on point. The set was great. But you never know how the audience is going to react. And the audience actually loved it. So very gratifying.
I'm glad you said that because my next question was, how did you feel? How does it feel to have your work up on the stage and people are speaking the words that you put together?
That was nice. Again, the best part is having your son in it. As a parent, I'm sure you appreciate that part.
Yes.
That was really the best part. But it's all very gratifying. Like when I write, given that I'm a young writer at a late age, I don't really write with an expectation of having the play produced. I'm writing because this is what I want to do. I like doing it. I'm trying to get it produced, but if it doesn't get produced, so be it. And so to actually get it produced and have your son in it and get a terrific reception from theater professionals really is very nice. Yeah, it's very gratifying.
I understand fully what you just said because I too wrote a play, one play. And I wasn't interested in writing the play, but what happened was the pandemic. Hey, why not? And all this research that I had did in terms of my family going back to the 1700s. So that I wrote a play that encapsulated all of that from the 1870, 1840, all the way up. And it's wonderful to be able to put your imagination into things. One of the things that I wrote about was, how did the people feel? One day they were slaves on a farm, and the next day they told them, you're free. But you don't have no money, you don't have no food.
Skills, no money, no nothing. Yeah.
You have skills because you did all the stuff for them. But so I'm just saying the gratification in terms of that, of taking the time to do it, then I understand. You write something, you write it because if it's produced, and that's great. If it's not, at least you have a legacy for your kids.
Yeah. And the other thing is, coming at it, sometimes I wonder if, let's say I hadn't gone to law school, if I'd been writing all these years, would I be further along as a writer? Maybe, but I'd also be a lot less comfortable financially.
And sometimes you have to give that consideration.
Yeah. And that was actually my mother. And that's what, going back, my mom was actually a big influence in my life. But I remember mentioning to her, a senior in college, about, what do you think about being a writer? And it was like, I did not send you to college to be a starving artist.
Oh.
Yeah, it was that. And so I never had to be the starving artist, which is nice. And that's one reason I can say I don't really write with the expectation of being produced, because I have a life, I have a living independent of that. And so it's like gravy when this happens.
And you can write at your own pace.
Yeah.
It's not that you're writing because you need to do something to feed yourself.
Exactly. Although I'll tell you, once a theater company says they'll produce your play and sign a contract, you're on a deadline, then it's like, oh, the director wants to change, blah, blah, blah. At that point, it's, oh, we gotta get some stuff done here. I'm not complaining. That's a high-class problem.
Yes, it is. It also makes me think of another example. I had a friend that had retired, and they started teaching for a college, or no, they were doing something for a college, and the president of the college did something that she didn't particularly like. So she said to the president, listen, my retirement checks is mailed to me. I can get food delivered to my house. I can have people come pick up stuff, so I don't have to go out at all.
That's funny.
She was telling him, look, either you straighten up, I'm out of here, because I don't have to be here. So that's what it reminds me of. Yeah. My final question is, where do you see Succession going to?
Well,
with all the accolades that happened, because I did see the accolades. As a matter of fact, your great friend Woody King called me up the other day and said, oh man, you need to see this play, Succession. Charles did a great job on it.
Yeah, I'm flattered. That's why it actually, Jackson State University in Mississippi, they're actually going to do a student production in end of September, early October. So that's actually happened. I've actually signed a contract on that. And then I've gotten some expressions of interest from college in California, city of Detroit, like Houston, theater in Houston. Nothing else is concrete. And so we'll see. And I'd love to figure out a way to bring it to New York. But we'll see how it goes. Everything, at the end of the day, everything's about money.
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line, especially if it will make money for people to put monies out.
Yeah, and we had a really good, the cast really gelled in that production in North Carolina. And someone at the College of California said, do you think we could actually bring the entire cast out? And I said, timing and cast, my son's already in LA, he's closer. But I said, it's a matter of paying people and if they have other projects going on at a particular time. So we'll see. Hopefully it has some legs, but you never know. You never know.
Judging by particularly the play that I told you that I did, the reading that I did go to, I'm sure that success is in the wind.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I hope you are right.
And one of the last things that I want from you is I want you to send me a signed autograph so that later on it will have value to it.
Come on, be serious.
Thank you so much for being on the broadcast. This was actually fun. It started off a little bit where you were saying, I have just this to say, but then you warmed up, especially when we start talking about your play.
It's more current. We go back a long way. A lot of that stuff that's water under the bridge. It's, oh yeah, what was that about? Like everything gets you to this place, but details of the long-term stuff. Because really, I did not live a star life. I cannot go back to every job I had and say, oh my God, this was so meaningful. Because to me, I was just cranking out the work to make a living.
I understand that.
That's what I was doing. And so nothing really, there weren't a lot of things that this was absolutely crucial.
But you cranked out a good living and you had a great career. And I wish you the best on this career as a playwright. Charles White,
Yeah.
the Princeton trained attorney that has turned playwright. Congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
And that's it for the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Join me next week for another episode.
Thank you for tuning in this week. Hope you enjoyed this show about stuff. See you next time.
When my aunt passed away, I felt unprepared. Not having a healthcare plan made everything worse. I didn't want this to happen to me. I wanted to make healthcare choices with my family and came across Comfort Homesake. They specialize in making space for people who need to talk about beliefs and values around serious illness. I like their inclusive approach.
Ababio's story of transforming the loss of her son into a powerful legacy inspired me. I shared her story in a chapter of my book, Lost to Legacy. Called Saying Yes, it reveals loss as an opportunity for discovering a deepened appreciation for life.
The more I learned about Comfort Homesake, the more I was drawn to them.
We went for my pacemaker upgrade that morning. When the doctor came in, I met her for the first time in person. She was speaking to my daughter Bianca instead of looking me in the eye. She made me feel invisible. All of a sudden, I became old, and I'm used to being my own advocate. I could convey whatever I wanted to about my health.
That happened to my aunt too, and I'm volunteering with Comfort Homesake to make sure it doesn't happen to other people. Comfort Homesake has some great programs that teach how to prevent unwanted medical treatment from happening to your loved one. Volunteers can also train to support community in a number of other areas. I went looking for information and ended up responding to the call for volunteers. Now I help others. It was the best decision I ever made. You should volunteer too. Visit comforthomesake.com today.
I'm Ali Sharif. Telehealth is the future, and Comfort Homesake is recruiting volunteers and serving seniors and caregivers in the fight against isolation and loneliness.